There's no sound.
Yes.
Okay, now, okay, fine.
Just our attendees are starting to join. Thank you all for joining us. We'll start in a couple of minutes maximum. Well, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Just remember to put your phones off, okay? Everybody, I just did that because sometimes we forget.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Oh.
Okay. Hello, everyone, our attendees. Thank you so much for joining us here on day 3 of the Global Conference for Diaspora Networks in Science. So day 3 so far, we've explored different diaspora networks in Malaysia, Portugal, Egypt, and Guatemala so far, among other countries with very vibrant diaspora networks. And now we're going to another very, very special diaspora network in Venezuela. The session will be titled Venezuela, a newcomer to the diaspora world, and it will be recorded. And now it is my honor to present to you the host of the session. She's one of the most influential scientific figures in Venezuela. She's Professor Yukonda San Blas, a professor in the Center of Microbiology and Cell Biology in the Venezuelan Institute for Scientific Research. Dr. Yukonda, how are you?
You.
Professor Yukonda, can you hear us?
Yes. Well, good day to everyone. Venezuela, with a population of 30 million, is a country located in the northern region of South America, facing the Caribbean Sea. Venezuela used to be a rich country, its wealth rooted in the oil industry. The economic and political mishandling of the nation since the beginning of this century has led to persecution, prison, torture, and even death of political adversaries to the revolutionary government ruling the country since 1999. Reasons to induce exile on those feeling in danger if staying in Venezuela. Additionally, the destructive economic policies generated by the government under the label of 21st century socialism have led to a complex humanitarian crisis by which 90% of the Venezuelan population live in poverty, according to universally accepted criteria. This situation has derived in millions of citizens leaving the country in search for a brighter future away from home. Venezuela, that until the end of last century was the country chosen by Europeans and Latin Americans running away from dictatorships and authoritarian rulings in their home countries, is now the land with the most numerous diaspora in the world, calculated between 6 and 7 million of Venezuelans abroad, around 23% of its population. Someone calculated that they could fill 85 football stadiums the size of the Lusail Stadium in Qatar, where the final match of the forthcoming World Football Cup will be played. Sadly, in this process, Venezuela has lost its demographic bonus because of the migration of a good share of its younger and better prepared citizens. Against this background, our invited speakers will share with us their visions and proposals for a brighter future for Venezuelans, wherever they are, be it in the country or abroad. With this introduction, I give way to our first speaker, Tomás Páez. Professor Páez is a sociologist and full-time professor at the university, at Central University in Venezuela. Master of Philosophy and PhD at University College London, member of advisory councils of many bodies such as the Inter-American Development Bank, World Association of Science and Technology Parks, advisor to business firms, author and co-author of some 20 books on subjects as diverse as strategy, quality and productivity, business venture, democracy and authoritarianism, and diaspora. In this particular subject, he is devoted to the study of the first global analysis of the Venezuelan diaspora in a huge project on which he performs as coordinator. Please, Tomás, lead the way.
Thanks, Yoconda, Professora Yoconda San Blas, for the invitation to participate in this virtual session of the Global Summit for Diaspora Networks in Science 2022. Let me start. Your presentation says so many words in the things I wanted to say, but anyway, in 2013, at Central University of Venezuela, we initiate the first and today only global study of the Venezuelan diaspora. It was conceived in 3 steps. The first one, the study, which at the end was 2 studies. The first one dedicated to look for the information because there was no official data about Venezuelan diaspora still. There is no information about that. And the second one was to know what Venezuelan people migrate, the reasons, how they integrate to the country that they host the country, and the interest and commitment to participate in the Venezuelan reconstruction process. The second, to do that, we use questionnaires, focus groups, interviews, life histories, life fragments, and so on. And the second step was to build a Venezuelan observatory, where with it we collect the information, update the information about where the Venezuelans are and the amount of Venezuelans, not only in countries but as well in cities, because migrants produces in cities, not in countries. And the third one, in the second one, we produce the map of the Venezuelan all around the world, but as well we publish and we will have it soon with the agreement with OEM in the diaspora. We produce the mapa of Venezuelan organizations all around the world by cluster, entrepreneur, engineering, health, mental health, and so on. And the third one, the third step is in which we are now, more than 7,300,000 citizens, more than 20% of the population, organized in so many associations that we are putting together, connect them in the new geography, Venezuelan geography. About the diaspora, there are prejudice, myth, and contradictory approach and arguments. The most common of them in the host countries are they destroy jobs, workers' salary and wage. They benefit from the services of the welfare state. With migrants come crime and insecurity, and so on. But from the origin country, there are two basic, there are more, but there are two basic arguments. The first one is putting the migration as a crisis, while the crisis is the country, economical, political, and the migration is a consequence of that crisis. So we have to change that point of view. And the second one, and very, very expanded, very used in the academic world in Latin America, is the brain drain concept. And we are in the opposite side. We think there is no brain drain, there is a circulation brain, and that's where point of departure. Based on the Annalisa-Xenian point of view, a circulation of human capital, based on Robert Guest's arguments that diaspora reduces global poverty, and based in the Clemens argument that saying that diaspora is a brain drain for the country is like saying that the participation of the women in the market, in the labor market, is abandonment of the home. No, it's like they left, the women left home, so they drain the home in a way. So is to use an example why talking about diaspora as if it were lost, we say having diaspora is a gain, is gains the migrant, gains the country that the host country, and gains the origin country. But diaspora is not only numbers, it's people, and people is the center of is the human capital. And without it, we won't have a real development. The central, they produce the ideas, they improve productivity, they create technology, they innovate. Doesn't matter where they live, because we can use them more in this moment where we have so many possibilities to communicate. Jean Monnet, one of the founders of the European Union, says that if had to do it all over again, if I have to start to building the European Union, I would start with education. That's the reason. The center of the development is the human being. But as Professor Gioconda said, after having our government, the 21st century government, the 21st century socialist government, we can say that in this area, in the scientific and educational area, they have been very clear, without any doubt. They say 21st century socialism, its purpose, and the purpose of education is to ideologize. They have said so. It's not something that we think. They have said so, and to indoctrinate. So doing that, it means that knowledge disappears. What matters is ideology, no knowledge. So the objective of science and technology system and its institution is to provide a smell, as they say, smell, heat, and flavor to the street and from the street. Science for the people, they say. But as Antonio Escobotado tell us, all solutions other than freedom have led to material misery. All have established poverty in exchange for ideological purity. The university had problems before this new model arrived. Had many problems, was divorced from reality. There were a mistrust between universities and enterprises, business companies, because there were two times. So what happened is that the institutions and business start to create their own corporate universities. The huge consulting companies start to building their own universities to look for answers to the needs for the development of human capital. There are more than 400 corporate universities all around the world, and so many universities have understood that they have to rebuild themselves to offer more flexibility, more short answers, more quick answers to the needs of the market. That the global dissatisfaction with the universities in the Venezuelan case has deteriorated. I don't know if it is the correct word, because what this model of development has done to the universities is just unbelievable. They destroy the personnel salary, the students, the libraries, everything. So there is no resources for research and so on. So the university has to face to, I'm looking for the time, please tell me where to go. So the governments and universities are aware, the scientific, the people who is working in the knowledge area knows that we need a new university. We need a more flexible university. We need a more practical university because there are so many changes. We are living now in the information area. We have the times between research, development and innovation has shortened. There is an obsolescence process that is incredible. The shortening of the times of the innovation are to produce, to go into the market with new product and services has accelerated so quickly. We can see that only in the applications in the digital sector. So new competencies and skills are needed to cope with this new reality, because as Prensky says, we have universities for the 19th century, teachers for the 20th century, and students for the 21st century. Students that use technologies that are part of networks, that has even more information that the teacher has, more access to new, I don't find the word fuentes of information, and new knowledge. They don't need now to have a degree course or third level student or fourth level, because with the work they have done in the Apple or Google or they are not asking for titles, they are asking for knowledge, practical knowledge. And the university has to understand that if they don't answer that, they will die. What are the efforts that the universities in Venezuela have been done in Latin America? They were timid. They create technological parks. They create 3 of them, one in the west of Venezuela, one in the Bolivar. They have created foundation. They have created small programs to teach and create entrepreneurs programs. Even they offer diplomas or master degree, but that's not enough. We have to use the entrepreneur concept to transform the university. The university has to become more entrepreneurship, more creative, more agile, more. If we want to be near the universities and to how many more minutes? Okay, so the thing is, we have to go from courses, diplomas, assistance programs, foundations, and so on. There is timid and fragmented experience, and to a more with a less fragmented picture, less fragmented managing the university to build an entrepreneur university is not a problem. It's how we transform the university for the new 21st century using the new technologies we have in our hand, and be able to answer the new reality for the students of the 21st century, for the enterprise of the 21st century, and from the business and institutions of the 21st century. That's basically what we are doing with the global network, global diaspora Venezuelan network that we are building. We have now 10 clusters in health, mental health, entrepreneurship, culture, and so on, and enterprises, because the private sector and enterprise will play an important role in the use of the diaspora as an asset, as the most important reserve of Venezuelan institution and business. That's all.
Professor Yoconda, you're on mute.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Paez, for your presentation. And now we move to Professor Vladimiro Mujica. Vladimiro is Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, Central University of Venezuela, PhD in Quantum Chemistry, Uppsala University, Sweden, postdoctoral training at University of Tel Aviv, Israel, professor in the Central University of Venezuela, Northwestern University, currently at Arizona State University in the United States, past director of graduate studies at Central University of Venezuela, and past dean at Yachay University in Ecuador. Author of a long list of publications in the field of quantum chemistry, he has been decorated with many awards, such as Science Prize from Polar Foundation Venezuela, Dresden and Mercator Fellow in Germany, Iker Basque Fellow in Spain. Recently, he was awarded a substantial grant to study aspects of quantum biology, a frontier field of research. Despite this intense academic life, Vladimiro finds the time to keep his eyes and mind in his native country, periodically writing opinion letters to digital media on the political course of Venezuela under the current regime, and actively involved in focal groups on Venezuelan political matters and diaspora. Vladimiro, the microphone is yours. Thank you.
Well, I will start by thanking the organizers of this very interesting conference. I've been attending a couple of sessions in addition to the one we are together. And also thank the Yoconda, and it's a privilege to be with the other members of this panel, Vilma and Tomas, and of course Yoconda. We have been friends for many years. And probably I should mention that Tomas and I, we went to the same high school, in fact. So I've known this guy for for more years than I want to confess. And also Vilma and Gioconda, we have been together in many civil society organizations in Venezuela and in Venezuelan diaspora. But and the reason why I'm giving all these perhaps personal details is because one of the ways, because Gioconda and Tomás have already said a lot about the general perspective on this problem. But one of the ways one learns about this type of things is through personal stories and histories. So we are all, I would say the four of us, we are, let's say, the product, the result of the public educational system in Venezuela. At some point back in history, Venezuela was a country of opportunities. And this situation that Gioconda so sharply described, poverty 80%, probably the poorest, not probably, the poorest country in the hemisphere, in the American hemisphere, and one of the top, or I would say bottom, poorest countries on the planet. So there was a time, but it wasn't like that. And Venezuela, when oil started being produced in Venezuela, so there was a huge jump when the combination of economic growth and political freedom and democracy started in the country. So the country went from nothing to one of the top countries in terms of building equality and education and public hospitals and public roads and of course public education. So we are the product of public education in Venezuela when there were opportunities in the country. So then in my particular case, I was a professor for more than 20 years at the Central University in Venezuela. That's the most important university in the country. Gioconda was a researcher at the Venezuelan Institute for Scientific Research. Vilma was a professor at the Simón Bolívar University, and Tomás the same at Central University. So the question, I mean, so how did it happen? How did we go? Because this is a very important question that I want to stress, and I want to call it the Venezuelan lesson to the world. We are not the only country where this has happened, but we are one of the most terrible and depraved stories of transforming a country with opportunities into a country where opportunities are hard to find. So this is what I call the Venezuelan lesson to the world, and it has essentially two components. One component is that those, including the political parties, those who were supposed to defend democracy, those who were supposed to think of the resentment that was building up in the country, we didn't do enough, and we opened up the opportunity for an authoritarian project to take hold of the Venezuelan government. And we open up the opportunity for authoritarian populism to take control of the country. And of course, you might say, oh, well, but these guys, they represent the evil and the only thing they want is power. Yeah, that might be true. But it's very important to analyze and to understand what is it that we didn't do right, and what is it that we are still not doing right. Because to recover the country, I mean, this question that we are asking now, so how can we contribute to recovering the university in our country? Well, it goes through the question of how do we recover the country to start with, because many of the things that Tomás is describing that most likely Vilma would describe, we are able to do some of these things from the diaspora. But the practical application of this requires that we recover the country and that we go back to a country where freedom of thinking, knowledge, the possibility of free enterprises, and of course, democracy goes back to the country, because otherwise many of these things, we won't be able to do that. So when we talk about this, how this happened, then there is another very important word that we need to analyze and to include in this discussion, and that word is polarization. when we get a society that is polarized, it's running a huge risk of going in the anti-democratic direction because of two different maladies, two different diseases. One of them is authoritarian populism, which is what we have in Venezuela, and the other is authoritarian behavior, like the one that, well, we are seeing in many other countries now. The risk of several democratic countries, including the United States, of falling down the way that polarization can bring, all the disasters that polarization can bring. It's not a zero risk now. We saw what was close to happening in France, and what happened recently in Sweden, and what might happen in Italy. So, and in South America, of course, we saw the case of Colombia and Chile and Bolivia and Peru, and most noticeable Nicaragua and Cuba, and of course, Venezuela. There are degrees in which this happens, but the whole thing has to do with a very complex phenomenon. That is what happened was a charismatic leadership takes hold and controls the narrative of hope. They sequester the language of hope. And when they do that, they get the support of people. And this is something that we fighters for democracy need to understand. It doesn't matter where we are. It could be the university, it could be entrepreneurs, it could be whatever. It doesn't really matter, because in the end, when, even if we don't believe in politicians, even if we think that politicians are stupid and whatever we want to think, you know, the more we think that politicians are stupid, the more we are running the risk that we are controlled by stupid people, which of course it's an oxymoron. That's not the case. Politics is extremely important, and we need to understand that as citizens. So now going back to universities. Okay, so because these are all general considerations. Now going back to the university, what we have seen in Venezuela, as Tomas pointed out and also Yoconda described, is the destruction of the university system and the research system of the country that used to be one of the most important in Latin America, together with the Mexican, Brazil, Chile, and Argentina. So we went from being on the top to being on the bottom. And I say this, you know, based on first-hand experience. It's not just the salary. I mean, when I entered the university in 79, 80 something, 84, let's say 85, my salary was close to $2,000 as a starting faculty member. And now it's now $200 perhaps, even less. So even less than that. So that's simply absurd. So you are condemning people, you are to live a life of poverty. You can't do what you are supposed to do. The number of graduate students, when I was the director of the graduate school in chemistry at the Faculty of Sciences at the Central University, we had about 100 graduate students, including many from the oil industry. Last time I visited Venezuela, we had perhaps 15, perhaps, and now we have less than that. And I'm still collaborating with my old school and teaching online, but it's really, you know, it's moving. I mean, it brings you to tears, because it's terrible what is happening. And then, of course, you have to I mean, you cannot allow, you know, become hopeless on all these things. You have to think ahead, and you have to think what can happen when we recover our country. There's no way we are going to abandon ourselves to say, okay, so all is lost because we are in the hands of these guys. No, that's not possible. But we have to understand that the university was not destroyed by accident. I think I have managed to popularize the term destruction by design. It is not by accident. It's not that it's just a bad government. Of course it's a bad government, but it's a bad government in the sense that we will define a bad government. But in the sense of building up control, domination, and ruling over the people, is not a bad government at all. It's extremely efficient. Evil is not stupid. Evil is very clever. I mean, if we want to come with religious analogies, we can do that, but I won't do that because this is a multicultural audience here. But if I did that from our, from the Bible, even though there are several holy books in this audience, but let's say the Bible and even the Quran. Evil is very clever. Evil tempted our Lord, and it tempted in a very effective way. So when we neglect and we start thinking that evil is foolish or stupid, we're making a huge mistake. They are evil, they're bad, but they're not stupid at all. And they discover that universities are dangerous. And they are dangerous because of what Thomas said, because there is freedom of thinking, there is freedom of research, and you can't allow that in an authoritarian regime. So essentially they destroyed the universities and they created some of the centers that can help them to build the type of country that they want. So this destruction by design is something that we need to understand. And we need to understand and bring it to the attention of our international audience like this one. So this to me is probably the most important thing, because my experience in Europe and essentially everywhere is that when people read about Venezuela, they ask us, okay, so now you explain to me, how did it happen? And how come that one of the richest countries in the planet managed to be one of the poorest countries on the planet? And then part of the question is, we are not a rich country. We have the possibility of becoming a rich country, but to really use the rich that we have, we need to be able to generate knowledge in the way that Thomas described. Okay, so now we go back to what is it that we can do from the diaspora? Well, we can, among other things, we can think about a new university. We can think about universities that do not depend on the state giving universities money and support, that they have some other ways of getting in international projects with entrepreneurs, with companies, with enterprises. So try to understand how knowledge can generate money for education and for research. And this is possible. And it has been done in many universities in the world. And the other important thing that we can do is to start demolishing boundaries in science and education and research, because the new, I don't want to call it the new world, but the way knowledge is evolving is, wiping barriers, compartments in science. So when we see Joconda, so you are, so this is a scissor or 2 minutes? 2 minutes. Okay, so this is scissor on time, 2 minutes. So
two minutes.
Right. So the way science is evolving is that we are seeing convergent science. So now we have nanoscience and biology and artificial intelligence and machine learning, and they are converging in directions that have nothing to do with the way science was done 50 years ago. So if we want to think about the universities, we have to think in these two directions. And this is certainly something that we can do, and we are doing it. I mean, the effort that Thomas described and what Vilma is doing and what I'm trying to do, it all goes in that direction. So I think that's all what I had, Joconda, 1 minute to finish. So thanks again for the opportunity to be with you, and I will be more than happy to answer questions or when time comes, because now it's Vilma's turn. Joconda, back to you.
No se oye.
Now. Okay. Well, thank you, Vladimiro, for your presentation. And now we move to the last speaker of this session, Professor Vilma Petrache. She first graduated from Central University of Venezuela in International Studies, followed by Master and Doctoral Studies in Public and International Affairs at the University of Pittsburgh. At her return to Venezuela, she became professor at the Central University of Venezuela, where she founded the graduate program of Global and International Studies. Unfortunately, political reasons forced her into exile. She became a political science and international relations instructor of the Social Science Department of Miami-Dade College, where she is currently Professor of Education, Social Sciences, and International Relations after completion of a doctoral program in Education and Organizational Leadership at Nova Southeastern University. Ex-research coordinator of the Rómulo Betancourt Foundation in Venezuela. Now her teaching courses are related to political and social science, international relations, and humanities. Your turn, Vilma.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me. And I have to say, I would love to use the background, but my computer is having interference, so I am using the blur background. First of all, I want to thank, of course, Gioconda San Blas, Dr. Gioconda San Blas, for inviting me to be part of this panel entitled Venezuela, a Newcomer to the Diaspora World. And of course, I am very honored and I would say flattered to be part of a panel in which two outstanding scholars are present. One, the most important scholar in the diaspora studies about Venezuela, who has done an excellent job, and I plan to address his work in my presentation. And of course, Dr. Mujica, who is an outstanding scholar and representative of the scientific diaspora. My presentation is entitled Role of the Venezuelan Academic Diaspora in the Rebuilding of Venezuelan University. And I think I plan to supplement, and I am a newcomer myself on diaspora studies, so I have to say I am humbled to do this for you guys, okay? What you have been doing about this, and to make a proposal at the end that I believe will be important to understand and to help in the rebuilding of Venezuelan universities in the very difficult situation and in the process of destruction by design that Professor Dr. Mujica has mentioned. As has been mentioned by Dr. Paez, it has been estimated that over 7 million people have left Venezuela. We are talking about a total of 28 million, which by my calculations represent between 22 and 25% of the total country's population. This is really huge. The exodus has particularly affected the academic system. By 2020, for instance, more than 40% of the academic staff of universities had resigned or emigrated. In Venezuela, the mass exodus of highly educated and trained people includes professionals from several areas. We are talking about doctors, engineers, scientists, professors, teachers, but also qualified technicians, entrepreneurs, managers. In other words, people whose skills are much needed for the reconstruction and development of the country. Even in the case of those skilled migrants who may decide not to return, these people can still contribute their skills and resources and support to the country's development projects. We know, and I think Dr. Paez mentioned that very well in his presentation, the global valorization of diasporas has changed. Knowledge and skilled qualified diasporas are no longer seen as undesirable brain drain, but are beginning to be valued as a brain bank, meaning as an important human capital that can be used not only to promote the development of the home country, but also as a source of resources to unleash global dynamics of circulation and transfer of knowledge and human talent. In this last respect, I have seen for instance, the research of two scholars of the Asia Pacific Research Center of Stanford University, Dr. Jiwook Shin and Dr. Rennie Moon, who in 2018 wrote an article that identified 3 approaches to the migration of high-skilled nationals, or also what they also call to brain power. These approaches are the brain drain approach, already mentioned by Dr. Paez, the brain circulation approach, also mentioned by Dr. Paez, and the brain linkage approach. I'm going to address the 3 of them, and although I may have some different views, not really different, but supplementary to what Dr. Paez says, he will know what I am trying to do with this. In short, the brain drain approach refers to the negative impact of migration in the scientific landscape of a country and the loss of talent that results from immigration. Although this approach is the most traditional for assessing the impact of the diaspora in developing countries, For the current situation in Venezuela, we can say this is the one that represents more Venezuela today due to the ongoing massive loss of the country's highly educated and trained people. The second approach to migration, mentioned by Dr. Paez, by the way, is the one of highest skill brain circulation approach, also common in less developed countries, which recognize the potential positive impact of migration to the home country, but only when migration is followed by the return to the home country. In this latter sense, this approach doesn't currently apply to the intellectual Venezuelan diaspora because of the reasons that have been mentioned by the two speakers that have been in this panel before me. And the third approach to migration of high skilled nationals is the brain linkage approach, which refers to the power and sustainability of the home-host interactions in which emigrants decide to engage, even when they do not return to their home country, which is an approach that this presentation seeks to address regarding Venezuela and its scientific and academic diaspora. Now, from a transnational perspective, the term scientific diaspora, of which the two scholars that are with me in this panel are part, and myself, and I would say, I hope that Dr. Yoconda San Blas won't be part of this because she will stay in Venezuela helping us with this project. The term scientific diaspora has been used to refer to highly qualified migrants who not only acquire knowledge in the host country, but who also contribute to their homeland, thus becoming agents of development by facilitating knowledge, connections, and technology transfer. In line with this definition, many countries have developed policies and programs to create linkages with their qualified immigrants, thus reflecting the adoption of a broad and inclusive approach to the diaspora. However, and unfortunately, with respect to the Venezuelan diaspora, there are no government policies or institutions to serve it. Neither has the Venezuelan government shown any willingness at all to promote the effective return or participation of diaspora professionals for the reasons also described, for instance, by Dr. Mujica and by Dr. Paez. Somewhat in response to the lack of their home countries, government support, and even the government's hostility and blatant disregard for the well-being millions of Venezuelan immigrants dispersed around the world. Venezuelan immigrants have proceeded to organize spontaneously in many cities abroad. And in general, it can be said that these diasporas NGOs have been mostly activated thanks to the volunteer work of Venezuelans, although some of these organizations have been also criticized due to their high level of politicization. However, a major, and I'm gonna give credit today to the person that is in our panel today, Dr. Paez, a major non-politicized effort aimed at creating a hub of the diaspora organizations of Venezuelans worldwide has been the Venezuelan Global Diaspora Network, a significant diaspora initiative seeking to articulate the Venezuelan diaspora with the recovery of democracy and rebuilding efforts of the country. This initiative, as I said, has been promoted and launched by our first speaker in this panel, Dr. Thomas Paez, founder and director of the Observatory of the Venezuelan Diaspora, but also by Dr. Carlos Ponce, director of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, and Mr. Juan Pio Hernandez, leader of the NGO Plan País. Specifically, the Global Diaspora Network of Venezuela can be described as an umbrella diaspora effort to articulate Venezuelans spread around the world in order to stimulate, promote, and facilitate mechanisms to enhance, share, and connect the efforts of Venezuelan diaspora organizations and relevant personalities inside and outside the country. As the Venezuelan Global Diaspora Network leadership has acknowledged, Professor Paez did it today, it is likely that many of the professionals of the Venezuelan diaspora, the majority of which had been educated in Venezuelan universities, will not return to the country. Yet, their strong affective bond with their higher education institutions may well serve as an incentive for them to share with their peers in Venezuela the knowledge and knowledge building skills and capacities they have refined or developed in foreign universities, and to build bridges to connect their home universities with innovation and cutting-edge knowledge initiatives required to rebuild the country. This possibility of institutional rebuilding of the Venezuelan university sector with the valuable input of the Venezuelan academic and scientific diaspora leads to various questions, and I'm going to mention two of them. How can Venezuelan universities manage from a distance and enable the coordinated inclusion of their scientific diaspora in the rebuilding of Venezuelan higher education institutions? And the second question, what strategies could be effectively implemented to use the education, training, and professionalism of Venezuelan scientists and academics working abroad, particularly in the absence of any government effort to attract and engage the intellectual and scientific diaspora in any feasible economic recovery plan? To answer these questions, I proceed because I have to be humble. I am not an expert in this. I examine a number of diaspora engagement strategies. And of course, I study what Professor Paez has been doing, like the ones, for instance, proposed by Serbian scholars Filipovic, Debjat, and Ferfila, and found them applicable mutatis mutandis to the Venezuelan academic diaspora because they provide a roadmap for the transformation of the skilled Venezuelan diaspora from a brain drain to a brain gain, and from a brain gain to a viable brain linkage with Venezuelan universities. One of these engagement strategies pertains to the establishment of a comprehensive and reliable database of the expert diaspora, such as the one already being developed by Dr. Paez Observatory of the Venezuelan Diaspora, and that is in the process of being globally articulated by the Venezuelan Global Diaspora Network. Another engagement strategy pertains to the improvement of the information flow to keep the professionals of the diaspora informed of opportunities and incentives for cooperation with their home country's universities, which is also a major goal of the Venezuelan Diaspora Network, and therefore may be attainable through this network. But the most relevant engagement strategy for the purpose of my presentation is the establishment of a diaspora virtual university as an umbrella organization to mobilize and engage the intellectual diaspora in the virtual and actual rebuilding of Venezuelan universities. To be sure, and as explained by Filipovic and Potnik, the Diaspora Virtual University is not necessarily a university as we know it, nor is an alternative to any existing university, but rather it's a transnational and transdisciplinary networking of diaspora experts and of people working at universities, entrepreneurs, researchers, and whenever possible, and we hope we could do that, of policymakers. The primary goal of this virtual university initiative is the transfer of diaspora skills and knowledge to improve the quality of homeland university training and research capacities. It is worth clarifying, and I am aware of this, that although this virtual knowledge building and expert networking organization may be the most relevant, it may also be the most challenging to achieve, and more so due to the absence of a home country's governmental involvement to promote the appropriate environment and provide the necessary resources and enabling conditions to ensure the diaspora engagement and sustainable networks of diaspora homeland partnership. As a result, initiatives to start rebuilding the knowledge and skill capacities of the homeland university sector to ignite the nation's institutional recovery must be supported entirely by the diaspora's self-organizing efforts and their respective institutional, governmental, and non-governmental alliances abroad. Now, regarding the models of academic diaspora congregation aimed at the transfer of diaspora skills and knowledge to improve the quality of homeland universities, studies about other intellectual and scientific diaspora engagement strategies with the homeland, like for instance, those of the Armenian academic and scientific diaspora, have identified the alumni associations model as the most effective and useful for both developed and developing countries. Specifically, the alumni associations model has proven to be highly instrumental in articulating the intellectual capital of the academic diaspora. This model, which was originally developed and improved by American elite universities, has become a crucial activating factor, both for any brain gain program and for the constant updating of the brain banks needed for homeland institutional building programs. In essence, the alumni associations model has helped to craft the diaspora's alumni into a talent backbone and may serve as a platform from which many diaspora activities can be released, including the ones involving the rebuilding of university training and research capacities. Such activities may encompass financial contributions, which are deeply necessary, but most importantly, may ensure, okay, I will be done soon, may ensure the engagement of diaspora's intellectual and social capital in initiatives such as the one I am mentioning here, the Diaspora Virtual University, for the benefit not just of their universities and inter-university scientific projects, but for the entire nation. To be sure, the Venezuelan Global Diaspora Network can play a pivotal role in identifying and articulating the intellectual, scientific, and business members of Venezuela's universities alumni associations that are living abroad, and in encouraging them to integrate the brain bank of a Venezuelan diaspora virtual university, so vital for the recovery of the Venezuelan university sector. And in this respect, the Venezuelan Global Diaspora Network could well become the core diaspora organization to craft and launch a macro engagement academic and scientific project like the Venezuelan Diaspora Virtual University. And let me just finish by saying, particularly to Dr. Paez, I am not putting all the burden in your shoulders, and because I am more than willing to get actively involved in cooperating with you and with the Global Diaspora Network leadership in crafting and implementing this project. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Vilma, for your presentation. And now we still have 3 or 4 minutes for any additional comment. I have no questions here in the chat, but with your interventions, I wanted to pose a worry I have, because I mean, what we need from people abroad, from our colleagues abroad, is to help us jump into the 21st century. You know, you being abroad, you are in contact and use new technologies, new knowledge, etc., that we don't have here. And it worries me that within the country, some people are just thinking on returning our universities to the 20th century as it was when this regime started. So it worries me that this vision of the past and attempts to rebuild it would jeopardize any idea of jumping into the 21st century. Well, Vladimiro has risen.
Just 30 seconds. 30 seconds for a last minute warning. The idea of a virtual university is fantastic, but let's not forget that teaching virtually scientific matters and engineering is very different from teaching other things. Arizona State University, where I'm a professor, has the largest effort in virtual university probably in the whole world. And I've been teaching online for several years. And believe me, there is no replacement for in-person teaching when it comes to labs. So whatever we are going to say about virtual university, let's keep in mind that these are very different planets when we go to technical and medical and some other disciplines. It's a beautiful idea, but let's not be too broad here because it doesn't cover everything.
I just want to add something. As I mentioned in the presentation, it's not properly a university, and it doesn't want to replace. It wants to do. It wants to be a mechanism for knowledge transfer, knowledge experiences, and I know that Dr. Paez has a lot to say about this because, as I say, we can work together in this project. I had been thinking about that a lot, Tomas, And I even had written some recommendations that I couldn't include in this presentation because it was too long. But I think we can work on that. And I know the technology issue, the technological part is a big issue, and Yoconda is actually talking about that. We need to actually put the Venezuelan universities into the 21st century, and I know technology is complicated. I teach myself online, and I know how complicated it can be in terms of even here in the United States, but still, you know, I think we can do, this knowledge transfer is very important. We can actually reveal and make, you know, possible for Venezuelan professors to participate in projects and help them, even in continuing being exposed to the knowledge needed to actually rebuild the Venezuelan universities from the inside. So I know Dr. Pais has a lot to say about this, but I know that I can help Dr. Pais in this project. I'm pretty sure that we can do something about it.
Well, I think,
Short comment.
yeah, thanks in the first place. Second, I think what you have said, what Vladimiro has said, what Yoconda has said and answered, all together we can put, I think we can produce a small book, a small paper for everybody to send it to the only Venezuelan that there is. There is no a Venezuela inside or outside. There is only one Venezuelan who can need to be in the 21st century, but who can use all the capacities that are inside and outside the geography we already know, but there is a new geography. So I proposed for the Professora Yoconda to produce from the academy or for the university, I don't know from where, a paper synthesizing the whole ideas that has been produced here. This is just wonderful. I think there are so many, and we can even improve it and get a good paper for the people in the world.
Sounds wonderful.
I agree with that. So we may work together and invite more people to join. The only thing I want to add before we go away is that in this exchange, in that virtual university, we have to have exchanges, particularly for what Vladimiro said. I mean, we are in the experimental sciences, so we need to move, I mean, through exchange programs from Venezuelans abroad into the country, or bringing students from Venezuela to abroad to get acquainted, etc. Well, with all this, I have to close this session. We could stay for longer, but unfortunately time is against us. Thank you very much to all of you. And certainly I think this is a good start for new ideas to help on this matter of the diaspora and the inside of Venezuela. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Al-Hussein, for help.
Thank you so much, everyone. Very, very eye-opening session. It was an honor to have you with us. Thank you, Professor Vladimiro, Professor Vilma, Professor Tomas, and of course, Professor Yoconda. Amazing honor. And to our fellow attendees, we're starting another session now. Please join us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.